Oh, welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. You know, I had this idea. I had these grand plans of what the show is going to be this week. I didn't realize that my shirt was going to match the curtains behind me. But welcome to sunny Florida. I have no idea how the show is going to go. I have no idea if the Wi-Fi in this hotel is any good. I had grand plans. There's a marina somewhere at this hotel. I don't get to look at this marina, my friends. It's got a little parking lot, got a little overpass going on behind. I thought about trying to do this from out at the marina. I have no idea if it would work. You guys have to let me know in the comments if this even comes across. I have no clue. I don't have all my normal equipment. I do have my regular mic, but I have a dinky little USB wire instead of my wonderful XLR setup. So hopefully the wire doesn't fall out of the mic. If it does, we're just going to adjust. But let me tell you something. There is a buzz in the air. And yesterday I was going to try to do a show before I left for the airport, then realized that I had my times wrong. So that wasn't great. Got to the airport, felt very good at the airport. It was a very nice time. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll just do one from the airport. And then I was like, oh, everybody's going to hate me if I'm sitting at at a gate doing a show. So I bailed on that. I was like, well, maybe I'll do it when I land. Flight got delayed. I will say, the fine pilot on the American Airlines flight, I gave them a shout out on Twitter. They did a remarkable job. We avoided the big storm, but I didn't know at that point, but there would be a storm brewing on Tuesday because, listen, as much as I would like to get into the fact that the Eagles and the Cowboys are going to start the regular season head to head on a Thursday night, which we'll eventually talk about. Maybe we'll get to at some point today. I really was excited after last night, the draft lottery. The Sixers finally get a little bit of luck to go their way. I was standing at a bar prior to going out to dinner last night. I fully expected that the Sixers were going to lose that pick. I couldn't keep up with what was actually happening because there was no sound. They had the captions. And I saw, I guess, what Kevin Agandi said about how the Sixers had lost that pick. And I was like, well, of course they did. And then I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Oklahoma City's logo should be up there, and it's not. So then what the hell happened? And then I started piecing together, oh, okay. The Sixers didn't lose that pick. They ended up in the top 4. And when I didn't see them get picked at 4 and I saw Charlotte instead, I went, oh, maybe we're getting a little bit of karmic payback here. We're getting a little bit of some good karma for the Markelle Fultz thing not working out and Jahlil Okafor not working out and Ben Simmons not working out. And I still don't know what to make of Cooper Flagg. And I was listening to ESPN this morning while getting ready. And there are certainly a lot of people who believe that Cooper Flagg is going to be a can't miss prospect. The debate today on TV, on First Take, on Get Up was about whether or not you would see Dallas trade Cooper Flagg, trade the number 1 overall pick to try to go after Giannis, which to me would be absolutely insane. But there could be some logic to it. I don't know. If I were a Mavs fan right now, I think you just kind of feel good about the fact that the NBA very clearly rigged the draft lottery in your favor. Like, make no mistake about it. When you look at what happened, we'll start here, and then we're going to get to the thing that actually does have people worked up today, which is happening around the Flyers, potentially, probably. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to recap real quick from the draft lottery. So the Mavs, they complete this really boneheaded trade where they don't canvass the league. They trade away their generational talent in Luka Doncic. They bring in Anthony Davis, who can't ever stay healthy. So you're like, all right, well, we know on the surface, it's a terrible move. Now, if you wanted to make the argument that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are at least quasi-redundant, I guess you could try to make that case, although they played well together. And you go, all right, well, they need a big. Anthony Davis fits the mold. Cool. Maybe you feel like for some reason it does make you a better team. Maybe you really were that worried about Luka Doncic's ability to play defense. And he certainly got hunted again this postseason. It's a big part of why the Lakers are not playing any longer. But when you look at that trade on the surface, you go, it doesn't make any sense. And then when Dallas won the draft lottery last night, and if you zoom out now and you look at it and say, all right, Dallas trades Luka Doncic to the Lakers without checking in with any other teams. They trade him to the Lakers. The Lakers get their big guy that they can build around going forward, whether LeBron James returns or not, whether LeBron is there for 3 more years or just 1 more year. The Lakers have their big marketable guy in Luka Doncic. And the Mavs walk away with Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg. And when you look at it on aggregate, you say, all right, it's still not a great trade, but it is good to go from trading generational talent, Luka Doncic, to having a guy that some believe is the best can't miss prospect in probably about a decade. I still don't know what to make of Cooper Flagg because I don't watch that much college basketball. And I've seen people kind of go two ways on it. And like maybe the idea is that his floor is the highest, right? And so if you go back to the Markelle Fultz draft and the Jason Tatum draft, the ceiling on Jason Tatum wasn't viewed as that high, but the floor was much higher than the other players. The constant thought was that Jason Tatum was the most NBA ready prospect coming out of that draft, which gave me the heebie-jeebies because if you remember, in the Evan Turner draft and the John Wall draft, the belief was that Evan Turner had the highest floor, was the most NBA-ready prospect. So anyway, the Sixers don't get Cooper Flagg. Now there's the name Ace Bailey's been throwing around, and there are certainly some other guys that might be in consideration at number 3. Could Nico Harrison shock the world and take somebody else entirely? Maybe. Is there any chance Cooper Flagg falls to number 3? Cross your fingers for a navicular bone break, right? No, I'm just kidding. But no. So Cooper Flagg is going to be your number 1 overall pick. The Sixers get to keep their pick. They're there at number 3. It is a win scenario for the Sixers. It is probably the best outcome they could have had coming out of the draft lottery last night. So if you want to thank your lucky stars, if you want to say the Flyers' misfortune in the draft lottery the week prior ended up giving a little bit of good karma to the Sixers, I would say good on you. So the Sixers are going to add another nice young piece to the team going into next year. They unfortunately are going to continue employing Daryl Morey to run basketball ops, which is an absolute unmitigated disaster. It has been to this point. It will continue to be so. And you have to hope that Joel Embiid's going to come back and look anything like MVP Joel Embiid. And there was a quote going around that Daryl Morey said that if Joel Embiid returns, he's going to be great. Like he's going to be back at it better than ever. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll see. Paul George, who can't stay healthy, we're just going to apparently believe that Paul George is still worth building around, and they're not going to canvass the league for any potential trade suitors. So that's exciting as well. So you just have a bunch of young dudes and then a few of the old dudes that are going to hold the whole thing back. So that's really exciting. And Jay Grebby is correct here. They hired Jameer Nelson as assistant general manager. There had been some things going on around Elton Brand, that Elton Brand might have been leaving, but he was sitting at the table last night with Nick Nurse and Daryl Morey at the draft lottery. So hard to say what's going to happen there. All right, now I do want to go out to the comments here in a second, and I want to make sure that we get as many people involved as possible across YouTube, X, and Facebook. And then when this show is done, and I have no idea how long it's going to go, when the show's done, I'm going to go eat. I haven't eaten today. I did make the most of the gym at the hotel today, which is wonderful. The gym is nice. The restaurant's very nice. There's a marina. It's on the other side, so you can't see it. I can't see it in the parking lot. I think that we should actually have a policy in this country that if you are a hotel that promotes being a waterfront hotel, they should have to show you what the view is from the non-waterfront rooms. Maybe it scares you. Maybe it scares your company into saying, you know what, do the upgrade. Because parking lot versus beautiful marina side, oh, it's a big difference. It's a massive difference. I should inquire. I probably should. Maybe I'll tell them that. I'll give them a nice shout out on the Russ Joy Show. I'm sure that'll make all the difference in the world. All right, real quick, we'll add to the comments, and then we are going to talk about what's going on in Flyers land because it is not great. It is not what I wanted. So Hex Ram says, hi, Russ. Love you, Russ. Hi, Hex. Not sure if I love you back, but I appreciate you. Appreciate you being here. Adam Glicka says, hashtag Russ a million. Josh White says, Tocchet is the guy. Question. I have a feeling that Tocchet's going to be the guy. And I'm not happy. Joe Papel says 5 by 5. I don't know what 5 by 5 is, but okay. Kenny Jones saying we sound good. All right. So all right. I temporarily lost the mic. We're back. As soon as he said that, the wire fell out. See, there's a little wire here, and it doesn't hold in the port. This is why I switched to an XLR at home. So anyway, glad that it sounds good. And then it dropped out. So here we are. Let's see. Ford says, I used to live on the same street as Kevin Agandi's mom. She always talked about how her son worked at ESPN. He has become bigger. What a mistake he made last night. Yeah, saying that the Sixers pick fell out of the top 9 or whatever, and so they lost their pick, which was incorrect. Video guy Amadeus here says, why did I choose to become a Flyers fan? It's a great question. It's one that I think a lot of us are going to be asking if and when an announcement is made in the next day or two, or by the end of the week, and the name happens to rhyme with rocket. I think it's going to be a hated hire. We'll get there in a second. Jay Grabby says, Russ, tell me Tocchet isn't the guy. Certainly feels like he's going to be. The report came out from Darren Dreger earlier this morning that, and it's the same thing that I've been talking about on this show, that Ant and I talked about on this show and on Snow the Goalie, and Bundy's talked about, that Rick Tocchet is the number one priority for the Flyers, the Penguins, the Bruins. Dreger put out today the Kraken instead of the Penguins, but still that he's the number one option. And I keep coming back to, I don't understand the infatuation with Rick Tocchet. I do not understand why there are so many teams that are willing to look past what I would say is a mediocre at best coaching career. Now, granted, we've said this before on the show. He's had to coach in like Arizona, so not exactly a great place to be. But I am absolutely beside myself with the way that people kind of look at Tocchet as a top name on the coaching market when I don't think he is. And I think that the bigger concern, if you're a Flyers fan, is that this guy does not have playoff success. This guy has not necessarily shown an ability to build, develop, and grow players, which I just do not like. I fundamentally think is the wrong thing. If you go back to Danny Briere's end of season press conference, he said, we want a teacher. We want somebody who's going to be a communicator, right? There was a certain thing that happened out in Vancouver this year where their number one player, their former 100-point man, Elias Pettersson, and JT Miller had some kind of an issue that was viewed as being longer than just this season. It was a longer-term issue between the two players. And Tocchet was unable to get those guys to resolve whatever the issue was. And ultimately, Vancouver had to trade away JT Miller, which made them a worse team. And Tocchet apparently tried to get Elias Pettersson to change the way that he plays. And that also might have been a mistake. Now, I'm going to just really quickly bring you guys over to this really quick, just so you have a general idea of what Tocchet has done in his coaching career. And like, listen, I know exactly where some people are going to go. They're going to look at the Jack Adams Award, which is fantastic, which he did achieve in Vancouver. But I'm not exactly sure that that Vancouver team has a 1C in Elias Pettersson. This team does not. I think that Vancouver team on the whole is a better team than this Flyers team. But let me see based on the internet connection here, if I can even try to share. Uh-oh, I might not be able to share it. Okay, I can't share it. That's not great. All right, it's fine. We'll figure it out. Yep. I got to close that out. Okay, I can't. While I'm on the road, there will be no screen sharing. God help me. Okay, anyway, Tocchet. When he coached with the Lightning, which Yzerman at the time, or looking back on it, said that he might not have given Tocchet a fair shake. Had a 52-point season in 66 games played, 82 points with the Lightning in the 2009-2010 season. And then he was let go. He didn't take another head coaching gig for 8 years. He then coached Arizona for 4 years, where they finished 8th, 4th, 5th, and 5th. Then went on to Vancouver in the 2022 season. They finished 6th. The 2023-2024 season finished in 1st, had 109 points on the season. The team went 50, 23, and 9. And then this past season, everything collapsed. Everything fell apart. And they technically went over 500, right? 38, 30, and 14. But if you add up overtime losses and regular losses like you should, that's under 500. It's 38 wins and 44 losses of any variety. Not a great season. And again, you had a legitimate locker room issue between Pettersson and JT Miller. So I can't go out of my way to tell you that I'm thrilled with the idea. Now, it doesn't mean that he's a bad coach. It doesn't mean that he's the worst coach ever. It doesn't mean that it's bound to be a failure. But if the idea here was to kind of rejuvenate the fan base and recharge and re-energize the fan base, Rick Tocchet's not that guy. It's not going to work. Like, that's not going to be the thing that's going to get people back in on this team. Now, in fairness, let's go with like a guy whose name was kind of floated out there, Pat Ferschweiler. Ferschweiler's name recognition isn't going to get anybody going. Then you say, all right, well, he won a national championship. And then you're going to have some detractors who say, well, Hackstall came out of college and that didn't work. And you go, all right, but Hackstall didn't win the national championship. Ferschweiler just did. Ferschweiler's also been an assistant coach in the NHL before. Name recognition wise, I don't know if it really matters if it gets people going. Alain Vigneault had good name recognition. It kind of worked for a little bit and then it didn't. John Tortorella had a ton of name recognition. It kind of worked and it ultimately didn't. Tocchet will be a guy who could be theoretically viral when it comes to the way that he's going to interact with the media and some quotes that he's going to have. Is he going to be a kinder, gentler Rick Tocchet as the coach of the Philadelphia Flyers? Is he going to try to push all the buttons that a John Tortorella used to? What's it going to look like? Is it ultimately going to lead this team to the postseason and not just get them to the playoffs, but help them to build them into that Stanley Cup contender over an extended period of time, which is what the whole idea, the whole plan has been since Danny Briere was brought in? I'm just not sure. And if you go back to the firing of Tortorella, from the second Tortorella was fired, Tocchet's name popped up. Even when he was still under contract with Vancouver, a lot of people said, all right, well, there you go. There's your former Flyer. There's your guy who's friends with Jonesy. Are they just going to hire one of the old boys club? And if he ends up coming here, it could end up being a good hire. It's entirely possible that it's a bad hire. I've said this consistently now. I think Briere is going to do enough to tweak this roster this offseason that no matter who the head coach is, pending, the team remaining relatively healthy, they'll make the playoffs next year. So Tocchet will look like an absolute genius, getting them from fourth in the draft lottery, sixth draft pick in the actual draft itself, getting them from that kind of a lottery-bound team to a playoff team. He'll look like a genius. But I think anybody could have done that. I think that that's how much better this team is going to be next year, even without knowing what moves they're going to make. I'm just convinced that they're going to effectively try to get this thing moving in the right direction. So make of that what you will. Let's see. Jay Grebby says, I'm tired of watching offensively inept Flyers teams. My dear friend Anthony Sanfilippo says, less than an hour since I texted you about Tocchet, and you have a show. Where's this efficiency during hockey season? I'm in Florida. I'm in Florida. I actually did say, though, that like as soon as I knew I was going to Florida, it was bound to happen that the Flyers were going to make some kind of news. It hasn't happened yet. It still could. I do have this here. And as long as the meeting schedule that I have over the next few days works, Ant and Bundy and I will be ready and waiting. If the Flyers make a coaching hire, we'll do a show. Hopefully that news won't break on like Friday as I'm flying back from Florida, because I'm pretty sure that the Wi-Fi on the plane and the people around me aren't going to want to listen to my dumb voice on an airplane talking about a Flyers head coaching hire. Let's see. This goes back to basketball here for a second, but Alex Schwartz says, how Nico's been GMing that first overall pick gets you a solid player in Dante DiVincenzo. Okay. Says a nice trade for a role player. Let's see. Jake Grebby says his team's about Tocchet. Outside of 1 year have always been offensively inept. They're going to be a boring team to watch. Stylistically, they're a boring, like Tocchet teams are boring. Here's the concern, right? Like if it's true that he really did try to get Elias Pettersson to fundamentally change his game after being a 100-point player, that should set off alarms in your head. It should set off alarms like if you were hoping that the next coach was going to empower Matvei Mishkov to find his offensive upside, unless Tocchet's just going to be a dick to centers and then just allow the wings to do whatever the hell they please, in which case I guess you could feel pretty good if you're a Flyers fan when it comes to Mishkov and Konechny and Tippett. And maybe if they end up getting a wing in this draft, or maybe they'll end up with the center. I do want to talk about one of their centers in the pipeline at some point here. He's on the thumbnail of the episode. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Let's see. The concerned fan, Superfan Eric is here. Says, hey, Russ. Hey there. Let's see. I see some people getting upset in the comments about the Sixers stuff as well. I don't know. Like Seth here, who says Butler left, traded Bridges, didn't take Tatum, mismanaged Embiid. Morey and Brand still have jobs, can keep going, but for my sanity, I'm going to stop. You could probably make a similar list on the Flyer side of things. And listen, they've been smart to try to, brand this as the new era of orange. But when you hire Rick Tocchet, for better or worse, you're going to have a lot of detractors. And you're going to have a lot of people saying that the new era of orange feels a whole lot like the old era of orange. Tocchet's going to have to, if Tocchet is the guy, and if he is offered the job and he takes the job, he's going to have to figure out a way, or the organization's going to have to figure out a way to market him to these fans that's going to make them feel like this was a thorough process. It was a process that included a ton of candidates, and that ultimately it had nothing to do with the fact that Rick Tocchet has prior ties here in Philadelphia for anybody to feel good about the hire. Flyers Purgatory says, can someone explain what's the case for Tocchet? He's 61, one playoff series win. Culture was shit last year in Vancouver. Leaked he wanted out in December. Dump and chase coach. Keller held back. Cooked Pettersson. Yeah, all these are legitimate and fair concerns. I'm not an ageist, but I don't think 61 is the kind of hire that you want to make. If you're looking for the long-term coach of a Stanley Cup contending team, I don't think it's a great idea. I am more concerned with what happened in the locker room in Vancouver. And to this point, no one has absolved Tocchet of any kind of wrong, not wrongdoing, but like nobody's absolved him of responsibility or his lack of ability to smooth things over between the players, which to me is a concern. Jay is probably right too. 10 minutes after I end the show, the Flyers are going to make an announcement. It's entirely possible. Let's see. Sean C says, why did we ever entertain the thought that someone else was a possibility in Philadelphia? He wouldn't get a second look if he never played here. That's a fact. I don't know if that's the only factor to why he's getting a look here. Listen, Sullivan, I don't think was ever going to be a realistic option, especially after the way things ended with Torts. I never thought David Carl was a legitimate option for the Flyers. Quenville was not going to be a legitimate option for the Flyers. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I know people are upset. I get it. Sloppy over on X says, what's the point if they claim that Torts lost the room because of his coaching style? Why bring in Tocchet? Because it's the same. It's a fair point. I mean, people are going to be... Sean C says his locker room in Vancouver fell apart and derailed a promising season. I'd rather Brad Shaw be the teaching and developing coach. Doesn't seem like the right guy to develop players. I agree. This is the thing that drives me nuts. I think that the smartest hire for them, just based on the names that have been kind of floated out there, I think the smartest name is Shaw. And I think that the players have had enough positive things to say about him. And there's the fact that he doesn't have a long track record as the head coach. He's not going to break the bank. You're not going to have to give him a 5-year contract. I would have much rather see them go after a Shaw. I could have even been talked into a Jay Woodcroft. I could have. I could have been talked into the idea that he really was a scapegoat in Edmonton and that there is something about he's 48. He's coached some of the best players in the world in McDavid and Draisaitl. I could have been excited about that hire. I think a lot of people would have been, but this isn't it. This is not the hire. But we'll see. Maybe that's great. Kevin Cooney over on YouTube says the guy won the Jack Adams last year. Yeah, and then he won the Jackass Award this year, letting his locker room fall apart, having to get rid of one of their best players in JT Miller. Elias Pettersson had a massive regression of a season. I don't look at a coach's award and say that automatically means that guy. Let's see. We'll keep going as the wire pops out. Joe Papel says Berube is the guy and they failed to pursue him last year. A big part of that is because they owed Tortorella a lot of money and they didn't want to have another head coach on the hook. They didn't want to be on the hook for another salary for a coach that wasn't coaching their team. But Berube looks like a hell of a coach now with Toronto, and it's a little bit different. Toronto's a much better team. But Berube is a guy that they were interested in. It was just they couldn't have moved Torts out of the way. Let's see. Amadeo says Dave Hackstall was a finalist for the Jack Adams. That award is meaningless. Jim Cochran says vacation, Russ, looking very relaxed. Is that shirt buttoned at all? Actually, I don't want to know. Jim, it is. There's a button. There's a button right there. We're good. We're good. It's not vacation, though. It's conference. Conference really gets going tomorrow. There's an event tonight that I'm going to. All kinds of stuff going on. But it is relaxing in Florida. Now I get it. Very humid, though. Very humid. Daniel Mullane says, don't think it'll be as bad as everyone thinks. However, I don't understand the desperation to hire Tocchet. Seems like a mediocre coach. I think it's fair. Let's see. Joe Fisher says, Seattle, Francis played with him with the Penguins. That's why they're saying him to the Kraken. But the report is he wanted to be on the East Coast. So we'll see. Ford wants to know what hotel I'm at. I'm not telling you, Ford. You're not showing up at my door. You're not flying down to Florida. Just coming knocking on my door. Let's see. Sean C says Vancouver held on to Bruce Boudreau as a lame duck for weeks before they could hire Tocchet. That is true. Chris Freed thought that I was ditching my family for a solo trip to Disney, but the hotel does not look like a Disney hotel. I don't know if I ever want to go to Disney. I've been there twice. I was there in kindergarten. I was there in high school with marching band. I don't know if I ever want to go back to Disney. And I saw that there was a video going around of the guy trying to figure out like how much it would cost for a family of 4 to go down to Disney. And I'm like, I've got 4 kids, so family of 6. And then like you get jumped by Fast Pass and all the other crap and everything's overpriced. And I don't think I need to go to Disney. We'll do Disney in the backyard. That's what we'll do. Let's see. CMZ is the one kind of playing the other side of the argument. Says, give me Tocchet, baby. All right, CMZ, well, you might be getting what you want. Evan Atkins says, the new era of Orange is just like the past. They can't get over this alumni nonsense, an alumni of losers. Damn. Oof. Let's see. Adam Gleekus says, my worry is how Craig Berube is now a coach that's built to the playoffs we had here in Philadelphia. Will the same thing happen with Rick Tocchet? Who knows? Really hard to know. Joe Fisher here with a point that I think is fair. Kind of want to see what Brad Shaw could do with the team for a full season. That's why I've kind of been on board with the idea of how about although I don't think you give a guy a 1-year deal, a 2-year contract to Brad Shaw to be the head coach of the team. Give him 2 years because while I think that they're going to make the playoffs next year, you're not expecting to actually compete for the Stanley Cup next year or even the year after. So if the end of this past season was just fool's gold, you're not on the hook for a lot of money. You're not on the hook for much at all. And you still have a guy that's viewed very positively in that locker room. And then let's just say next offseason, there's a name that does pop up. Or there's a coach that would make sense to go after because they happen to have a good relationship with a very, very important free agent coming on the market in 2026. And you say, you know what? Maybe if we hire that guy, it can help us get that incredible talent in town. And then you say, all right, that might be the way to go. This doesn't do anything for me. If this is what they ultimately do, Tocchet. So not sure. Let's see. Chris Freed says, chisel it in stone. Flyers hire Tocchet and it'll go so bad the entire front office will get washed out along with Tocchet. Well, they're going to so follow my logic here. If they make the playoffs next year, the front office is safe for another year. If they hire Tocchet, they make the playoffs, and then the year after, they add at least one meaningful free agent, they're probably going to improve on that first playoff run. I don't think that there's a scenario here where they all get washed out within 2 years. Is it possible that like hiring Tocchet ultimately means they're not going to compete for a cup and they're going to be like one of those like sort of mediocre bubble playoff teams? Like that's the fear, right? Because we've seen that for decades now. You don't want to be one of those bubble teams. You don't want to be like one of those 6th place finishers in the Eastern Conference. You want a team that's going to be like top 3, top 4, and feels like they have a legitimate chance every year of not only making it 2, but ultimately winning a Stanley Cup. Jay Grubby says, you really think Danny's going to do enough to get us into the playoffs? No 1C, 1D, or 1G. Yeah, I think they will. They're probably going to go out, whether it's free agency or a trade, and get a goalie in here that they're going to pair with Sam Ersson that's going to bring some stability. Anything is better than Alexei Kolosov. And I think they're going to be done with the experiment with the Iron Giant, I'm Fedotov. I don't know how that'll work, but that might end up being what they ultimately choose to do. And so if you take that part of it out of the equation, you are trying to improve at goalie. That automatically is going to make you a better team going into next season. Oh, hold on. I've got a knock at the door. Let's see. Hold on. I'll be right back. Let's do some elevator music. Hold on. All right, we're back. So I think that they're going to fix the goalie position enough that this team is going to be better next year. Now, what that ultimately means, is it going to be a team that's going to, compete for the cup next year? Highly unlikely. In fact, I'd say it's less likely than anything that they're going to compete for the cup. Are they going to be better? Are they going to get more consistent goaltending night in and night out? Yeah, that's probably where they're going to end up. The 1C is a thing that's a legitimate concern. The 1D is certainly a concern. Will Travis Sanheim ever find the ability to become a 1D? Highly, highly, highly unlikely. Can he at least be a relatively reliable top pair defenseman? The answer there is probably yes. If Jamie Drysdale is able to kind of build off of a strong-ish final and we're back again. Now I remember why I switched off of doing the USB mics. This is why. Oh, and now we got sounds in the room. This is great. We're off to we're having a good show today, guys. The 1C issue is something. Oh, Jesus Christ. That's fine. The 1C thing is going to be something they cannot address this offseason. And I don't think that they have anybody right now on this roster that they would be able to trade to go out and get a 1C. I wanted Wyatt Johnston. That was the guy that in restricted free agency, I think would have been a legitimate game changer for this team. Could have been an organizational shifting kind of player. I get that he's super young, but he performs. He performs in big moments in the postseason. They have a young player that they drafted last year that I thought was a stretch in Jett Luchanko. There are people who are already starting to, hit the panic button about Jett Luchanko. Is he actually going to be a good player? Is he going to eventually develop into a 1C? I don't think he's going to be a 1C. He might be a 2C, and maybe you think that's okay. I will always point back to the fact that fake playoff run that they went on with Torts 2 years ago was probably the most detrimental thing to happen to this organization in a long time, because it prevented you from going up and getting a player or being in a position to get a player that could have actually been an impact player and a difference maker for this team. And instead you went after a guy in Luchanko who kind of fit the need as a center, but I'm not exactly convinced is going to be a player that is going to make you one of those, year in and year out top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. And if you're not going to get one of those guys, I will once again ask the question, what is the point? So Luchanko also, there are legit concerns about his inability to score goals in the AHL. Now, granted, it's a small sample size, and so I'm not ready to hit that panic button the way that some other people are. But the inability to get things done at the AHL level when you're viewed as probably the best center prospect in the organization is probably an issue. Like if next year, I assume he's going to go back to golf, and if he does, you better hope that he lights the world on fire. Will he get a chance to make the team out of camp next year? Possible. Could he make the team out of camp? Maybe. But here's the problem. If Luchanko makes the team next year out of camp, what is the upside? Like, what is Luchanko going to learn how to do at the NHL level that's going to make him a more dynamic player, or that's going to make him into an impact player? And for me, an impact player at center, right, is a guy who can net you at least, like, let's say 20-ish goals, right? and can be a facilitator, can be a 200-foot player. But like, I don't think he has 1C upside. So if he's going to be a 2C and he was your first round pick in year 2 of the rebuild, that probably isn't good enough. And especially when you chose to take him over Zeev, who very much projects to be a top paired defenseman, that's a concern. It almost feels like shades of taking Cam York over Cole Caulfield. So we shall see, my friends. Let's see. I got lost in the comments here because there are very, very many comments. Holy shnikes. Let's see. I'm going to try to jump around here really quickly. Sloppy asks over on YouTube now. Sloppy was on X and is now on YouTube. Says, different subject. Do you think they can pull a trade of the number 6 pick and Cam York and a second for second overall? No. I don't think anybody's going to trade in the top 6. The only thing that I've been on record now as saying this, I think Utah might be the team that you could maybe convince to move back to 6 if you include another first, whether it's the Colorado first, the Edmonton first, or your first the following season. The downside to trading your first next year is what happened with Utah and what happened with the Islanders, that, you know, let's say, God forbid, you try to make the playoffs, you get hit with injuries, you don't make the playoffs next year, and then that you could have potentially, let's see, shoot. All right, there we go, back. The issue, if you're Utah, is if you're trying to do a trade with Utah, if you trade your first round pick next year and that pick somehow does jump up in the lottery the same way, and you miss out on the chance to get, I don't know who the Gavin McKenna's next year, on the very off chance that the Flyers finish, like, let's say, with a 10th worst record next year, and then they have traded their pick for next year, and it goes to Utah, and then Utah somehow gets lottery luck again, and they move up to number 1, and they end up getting Gavin McKenna, you'll never forgive yourselves. So I'm not sure that that's the way that they'd go. Does the Colorado or the Edmonton pick change things enough for Utah that they say, you know what, yeah, we're willing to move back from like 4? If there's a player who falls to 4 that the Flyers don't expect to get there and don't think will like fall to them at number 6, could they make a trade? It's possible. It might happen. Let's see. Evan Atkins says hiring Tocchet would also mean the end of Sean any assistant role. He has enough clout, and all his assistants are former guys he played with. I feel like they want to keep Shaw no matter what. So make of that what you will. I'm not exactly convinced that if Tocchet's the guy, that Shaw is then out of a job. I'm not positive that that's what ends up working out. Let's see. Ray Supper says, I would prefer an ungraded roster first than a high-profile coach. Let's see. Amy says, see how Berube fares if Toronto loses the series. It's interesting. Evan asks, why has Shaw never been a head coach? I think he was for a little bit. I don't know. Some guys are just kind of viewed and are kind of put into a different bucket as being assistant coaches, and they never really get their fair shake as a head coach. He was a loyal guy to Torts. I don't know. Maybe he didn't have the same kind of like head coaching aspirations that some others have had. Let's see. Andrew Fawcett says, I'm fine with a coach who hasn't worked at the NHL level before. Younger would work. John Cooper didn't have NHL experience when he was hired. It's fair, but he also had a very stacked team. So this team is certainly not that. Let's see. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. Jay Grubby says episode 100 is going to be the episode that goes over the hiring. It might be. So as of right now, the plan is to do an episode on Wednesday on the normal day. And so we'll see if it happens or not. And if it does, it might be the Flyers have hired Rick Tocchet show. Let's see. Jay Grubby asks about going after Marco Rossi. It's possible. Listen, I think that they could be involved in offer sheets this offseason. It's just kind of hard to see because it's kind of the good old boys club when it comes to GMs in this league. And it's like restricted free agency is the thing that no one is willing to do. And it's not because of the draft compensation. It's because they're like, I don't know, worried about hurting each other's feelings if they poach players. But like ultimately you have to be willing to take risks. And we'll see if they are. Joe Papel says, Russ, why don't you stay in Florida Friday night and cover Panthers Leafs game 6? Because I want to get home to my family, Joe. I did find out though, if Toronto somehow makes the Stanley Cup final, I'm going to be in Toronto for another work conference that week. And so maybe I'll take the mic around and interview Leafs fans if they get their hearts broken while I'm up there. But then again, are they ever actually going to make the Stanley Cup final? We'll find out. Let's see. Joe Fisher says, I think Jett may be a passer. We'll see how he does in the preseason. We'll see. I mean, listen, so this is the other piece of it. The reason that we don't get to see any more of Jett Luchanko is because the Phantom season ended prematurely because they had terrible options in goal. And the most terrible of all is Cal Peterson, who will hopefully never play another game anywhere in the Flyers organization. And Ian LaPerriere was quoted after the elimination game, I guess, of saying that he is interested in head coaching gigs in the NHL, which is a pretty wild thing. Now, the question was about that. So it's not like he just brought that up unprompted. But the fact that like after an elimination and after you decided to go back to Cal Peterson again, you're like, yeah, I would like to be an NHL head coach. Maybe the timing's not the best there. I will say the guy who I think so much of the blame falls on for the early ending of the Phantom season is a guy who doesn't even play for them. It's Alexei Kolosov. Like if Alexei Kolosov had just done what he should have done, which is report to the Phantoms, play for the Phantoms, maybe spend the whole season with the Phantoms or spend some time with the Phantoms and then go back down and stabilize that position and play really well and play with this young group of players that are hopefully going to make it to the NHL in the next year or two. Like there's a case to be made that you could have all grown together and Kolosov could have played himself into a lot of money. But there are a whole bunch of factors and a whole bunch of reasons why Kolosov didn't end up playing in the NHL or the AHL much. I will just point out, Cal Peterson stinks. We know Cal Peterson stinks. The Flyers very clearly believed so little in Alexei Kolosov's ability to go back to the AHL and contribute in a meaningful way. They believed so little in it that I think he went home to Belarus. Like I have no idea, but he probably should have been starting a playoff series. And that's how little they think of him that they said, you know what? I would much rather have Cal Peterson in net. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad, very bad. Tony Louis says, say his name and he appears. I believe in Russ Joy. Says, I agree. Luchanko isn't ready yet. He'll be a 2C if we're lucky. Scoring touch, very limited. Could be. Chris Freed says, shout out to the NBA for making the WWE look real. Jim Cochran says, the outlook you have on the Flyers next year, improved playoffs, doesn't mesh with everything else you're saying. Bad coach hire, top prospects won't pan out, etc. Make it make sense. Okay, simple. They will be better in goal because they won't have 3 goalies on the roster. They'll have Sam Ersson and a proven veteran who will probably take the majority of the starts. So they'll be better in net. If this Flyers team had gotten better goaltending, they would not have finished number 4 in the draft lottery. They would not be picking 6 right now. They probably would have been around 10th, 12th going into the draft lottery. They would have missed the playoffs, but they would have probably gone on a little bit more of a run. Torts probably wouldn't have gotten fired. Goaltending is what it's all about. If you have mediocre at best goaltending, you can still kind of compete in this league. When you have the absolute unmitigated shit show that was Alexei Kolosov and even Ivan Fedotov and the constant injuries, groin injuries to Sam Ersson, there's no way to win. There's no way. So improving goaltending on its own is going to make you a better team. And then I think Danny's going to They're not going to trade Risto unless there's another big body defenseman they can bring in. I think that there's a good enough likelihood that they're going to explore the Cam York trade market. I would assume that the blue line is going to be bigger. Like if you send out Cam York, I don't know what it'll be for. You'll I thought I broke the mic. We're good. We're back. The wire just doesn't stay in. It doesn't say. Do I order a new wire to the hotel for Wednesday and Friday show? We'll find out. They defensively, I think, will get bigger on the blue line this offseason, which is going to make them a better team next year. Forward-wise, I think that you saw a little bit of a bounce back in Sean Couturier at the end of the season. You're not going to have a head coach who's going to run him into the ground like Torts did with him at the start of last season. Couturier will probably not play 1C minutes. You can try to find a better balance. And if I don't know what player, like let's say you go after a Rossi that would be interesting. I think that they're going to do something. You know the meme of like the cartoon guy standing there with the stick, it's poking. It says do something. I think Danny's going to do something. I'm not saying it's going to be incredibly meaningful. I'm not saying it's going to change the trajectory of the entire organization, but I think he's going to tweak the roster enough, and these guys are going to play hard for whoever the coach is. I might not think that Rick Tocchet has like this incredible upside as a head coach to make you a perennial cup contender, but I don't think he's a shitty coach. So like run this whole thing back, right? Tocchet to me is not a long-term cup contending coach, but he's still a good coach. He's not an idiot. He's probably not going to piss off the players as much as Torts did. These guys have played for Torts. They might end up getting annoyed by Tocchet. I have to imagine that if you're Tocchet, you're cognizant of the guy who preceded you, and you're probably not going to go about coaching these guys the same way. I think that just having a new fresh paint, a fresh coat of paint on things could end up making the team a little bit better. And better enough that in an Eastern Conference that I honestly think was garbaggio this year. Like, let's not overrate what the Eastern Conference was. I think when you put all those things together, the team probably has a legitimate chance of making it to the playoffs. Let's see. MM over on YouTube says, don't hire Talk, Danny. New blood. It's 2025. All right. Evan Atkins says, Flyers handling of Kolosov was the crap we were told would eventually stop in the new era. So, and then he compares here Cutter and Kolosov. Not the same situation. I had somebody reach out to me 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, who covers the college game, who said that this person wondered aloud if part of the reason that the Flyers drafted Luchanko over Zeev was because Zeev William has the same agent as Cutter Gauthier. And could the Flyers have been worried that Zeev wouldn't have ended up playing for the Flyers? And that might have been the reason why they ended up taking Luchanko instead. That it could have been an agent-driven decision, which honestly would be horrific. And if that's the case, you got to smooth over that relationship. The Gauthier thing and the Kolosov thing, I don't think are the same. The player, in the case of Gauthier, the player had his reasons for not wanting to be here. Could it have been Torts? Could it have been because Fletcher guaranteed him that he was going to get to play? They would burn a year of his ELC, even if it meant he'd only play one game. I kind of tend to think that there was some truth to that. And that when Fletcher was fired, Briere got installed, you still had Torts. The idea maybe was that, like, no, in fact, you're going to have to earn it, or we're not going to burn a year of your ELC. You can compete coming out of camp the following year. Maybe that's what soured. I don't know. Could have been any of those reasons. But it's not great. It is not great. My mic is doing something weird, too. I don't know what that means. It's like doing these little flashies here. Hold on a second. There you go. I don't know what the flashing means, but if the audio still works, I guess we're okay. Let's see. Joe Papel says, without a 1C, 2C, 1D, and 1G, you're just not moving past 8 teams to get the 8th seed. I disagree. Would I put money down on it right now? No. Let's see what the offseason looks like.
Let's see what the players they go out and acquire look like. Listen, if I'm wrong, okay? If Danny doesn't go out and tweak this roster, if Danny doesn't go out and change this roster and they run it back again, well, then it's clear they are tanking for Gavin McKenna, right? But that's not going to happen. If they barely touch the roster, they hire Tocchet, things implode, the locker room rebels, and Tocchet oversees the second straight year of things going sideways with a team, then there are going to have to be a lot of questions about the front office and the decision-making process at that point. I just don't think it's going to happen. Let's see. Tony Louie asks, is Yeet Man going to drop the belt to Gunter or Logan Paul, or are we stuck watching his 15-minute entrance every episode for the next year? Yeah, he's probably going to keep the belt. Talking about Jey Uso. Probably going to keep it. We need a little bit of wrestling here. Last thing that I think I wanted to get to, I don't even remember now at this point. We talked about the Sixers. We talked about the Flyers. We talked about Jett Luchanko. I brought this up at the top of the show, but the Eagles and Cowboys are going to start the season head-to-head on Thursday night, starting the NFL regular season. And I saw a bunch of people getting in their feelings about it. I don't know what. So I saw people getting upset that, like, the rivalry game should happen later in the season. Oh, there we go. That these games should happen. I lost my. Did I lose this? Let's see. No, we're good. Oh, switch to the AirPods. Oh, no. We can't do that. Let's try this. Oh, God. If we have to switch.
Nope. There we go. All right, we're back.
There we go. I think we're just going to do the AirPods to end. I can't keep switching off the mic. It's going to drive me nuts. I can't do it anymore. I've done enough, and I shan't do it any longer. I might actually go buy a new wire before tomorrow's show. If you're upset about the Eagles and the Cowboys playing each other too early in the season, I think that your priorities are misguided. There's nothing quite like being able to go into a season knowing you're taking on your number one rival on the first game on national TV, and you get to hold over Dallas fans that they're going to actually see a banner get raised, which they are certainly not used to seeing. So, like, that to me is in and of itself worth it. Could it ultimately matter? Like, if the Cowboys end up being a good team and you lose to them in week one and it was because, like, I don't know, you had a slow start and you just weren't ready for it, and then you lose the division by a game, fine. We can come back and we can be upset about it after the fact. But the idea of being upset about it now, being upset about starting the season against Dallas now, feels like being upset just for the sake of being upset. I will not back that. I love the idea of going through the entire training camp and the beginning of the preseason, knowing that you are about to take on this heated rival, or what's supposed to be a heated rival. Go bury them in week one. Take their hopes and dreams and crush them in week one. That's the point of a rivalry. So I love it. Let's see. Joe Papel says, what town are you in, Russ? What beach? What ocean? Any hints? I'm in Fort Lauderdale. Somebody's car alarm is going off. I wouldn't be hearing the car alarm if I were on the marina side, but instead I'm at the parking lot over here. So, let's see. Anything else that I wanted to get to here? I saw a Philly fan put in here about Black Friday. Did that get announced? Did I miss that? Has that gone live since the show started? That the Eagles are going to play on Black Friday? Is that a thing? They stole Black Friday. Let's see. Eagles, Black Friday. Did that happen? Oh, okay. So they're taking on the Bears on Black Friday. Okay. Very interesting. The Eagles put it out. Oh, put it out yesterday. See, I go out of town and I start missing things. I'm not as sharp as I once was. So they have the Bears on Black Friday, steal it from the Flyers. Okay. You know what? I just hope they stagger the game times, because if I have to go down and do a Flyers game, whoever they end up playing on Black Friday, as they do every year, and I'm going to have to also fight Eagles fans, I can't have that. They'll drive me nuts. Let's see. Last thing, Joe Papel says Flyers losing Black Friday game is no big deal. It doesn't bother me at all. And Joe was the season ticket holder, so there you go. All right, I'm going to call it there. I've had enough tech issues to drive me nuts for the day. The plan is to be back on Wednesday. I don't know what time. I have a very, very packed day of meetings and an event at night. Thursday, same thing. Friday, I fly out in the afternoon. If I do, Friday's show could be interesting. I could either try to wing it here before leaving for the airport. I could try to do it at the Fort Lauderdale airport, which might be chaotic and fun, or I'll do it when I get home on Friday night. I'm not sure which yet, but it's going to be a blast. So stay tuned to the show. I want to thank everybody who found the show today on YouTube, Facebook, and X. We'll be back in the normal studio next week, but in the meantime, we're on the road in Florida, and hopefully the show was at least kind of up to some version of the bringing joy to your life standards. So let me know in the comments section after the show's over what you agree with, disagree with. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, and don't forget, if you like listening in podcast feeds, it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. You can leave a 5-star rating on Spotify on the show page. You can leave a 5-star rating on Apple Music or on Apple Podcasts, and you can also leave a 5-star review, and I'll read it on the show. So until, I guess, Wednesday, which is tomorrow, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to all of you tomorrow here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a marvelous day. Have a terrific Tuesday. Talk to all of you tomorrow.